Hello everyone, welcome to the first video in this beginner's guide where I'll be covering all of the major tools available to our favorite swordsman of the manji, Yoshimitsu. Yoshimitsu is a unique character that relies on his large amount of situational tools to confuse the opponent. Because of this, Yoshimitsu can be played very differently from one another. So let's get into some general pros and cons. The first good thing about Yoshimitsu is his large and diverse moveset, which allows the players to express their creativity a lot better than some of the other characters in the roster. His unblockables are actually very good as well. He has a lot of unblockables and quite a few of them can be incorporated into his regular game plan, which is pretty nifty. A lot of other characters can't do that. He also has strong okizeme and mix-ups and very deceptive setups, making the opponent keep on guessing on what you're about to do next. Another very appealing thing about Yoshimitsu is that his moves are not too execution heavy. They're fairly easy to perform themselves. You don't have to worry about strict timing for most of them. So we don't have to worry about very specific inputs for most of his move. Lastly, sword moves cannot be parried, so any attack that involves like the hilt of his sword or the blade of his sword, the characters cannot really parry that, especially ones that are low. You cannot do low parries on moves that involve the sword, so that's a very useful thing to have under your belt. On the flip side for the cons, most of Yoshimitsu's moves are highly situational. Combining that with the fact he has a very large moveset to begin with, you're going to have to learn a lot more moves in order to fully utilize his game plan, and that can be very time consuming. Similarly, he has a lack of abusable moves that can have a high payoff with little risk of failure. Nearly all of Yoshi's unique tools can be countered and can cause a blow up, some more than others. Next is his combo damage. While I would say his combos were fairly weak in Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag Tournament 2, they've actually greatly improved in Tekken 7. Still, his go-to combos have mediocre damage, while his more damaging ones require big launchers or stage interactions. Putting these things together, you'll find that Yoshimitsu's effectiveness is greatly dependent on the player's knowledge. There's a lot of situations and tools to learn, and I'm hoping that this guide and a lot of the other ones around will help you target which ones to go after first so you can learn the character. Lastly, it can be very difficult to open up knowledgeable opponents that are up to your tricks. That's why it's so important to learn a lot more of tricks so that you can throw them off their game. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of what Yoshimitsu is all about if you didn't before, but more importantly than anything I've just said, make sure you just try out the character and see if he's fun for you. After playing multiple characters since Tekken 2 on the PlayStation 1, I decided to stick with the Yo-Man in Tekken 6. In that time, I found Yoshimitsu to be the most emotionally rewarding character to use in the franchise. Now let's kick off the next part of the guide, showing all of Yoshimitsu's punishers, launchers, and screw attacks. Since I will not be narrating this part, be sure to pay attention to all of the information on the screen. Let's get started. So next is Yoshimitsu's top moves, but before that I'd like to real briefly talk about some of his pokes since there's no real section for them. For his high jabs, he has 1-1 and 2-2. 2-2 is not my preferred option since it does a lot less damage than 1-1, but since 2-2 jails it can be used for the occasional float and juggle conversion, it can be a viable alternative to 1-1. Down forward 1 is a great mid poke that has good range. It has 2 extensions with down forward 1 2 and down forward 1 4. A bit of warning though for down forward 1 4, it is not a good poke, and I'll show you why. First, it's unsafe on block, -14, meaning that some of the characters can even launch you. Additionally, it jails on blocks, so there's no hit confirm and there's no mix up with down forward 1 2, which is a mid high. Don't poke with a down forward 1 4. Down forward 4 on its own, however, is a great poke. It has great range, comes out fast, is safe on block. It's a good move to throw out when opponents are advancing on you at range, or if you're trying to get people to get off of you. Down 4 is the quickest low poke available at 12 frames. It recovers in crouch, so you can follow up with any while standing moves from here. Down 3 is your quickest high crushing low poke, in case you need a faster low without fear of getting jabbed out. As you can see, down 3 also recovers crouching. Neither of these are safe on block, so I would only use if you need to take away that last bit of health on a novice or grounded opponent. Well, that's all I really wanted to say on pokes, so let's get into his key moves, starting with his armored and rage attacks that have been introduced in Tekken 7. For armored attacks, forward 3+4 is Yoshimitsu's only power crush. It absorbs hit during the startup animation and transitions into running flee stance on hit. A follow-up 2 from flee is a free hit if done immediately, so the combined damage isn't as bad. You'll not go into running flee if the attack whiffs or is blocked. The no storage stance version never goes into flee, but more on that another time. All in all, this power crush is not that good. It has very good range, but when used at that range, the running flee hits do not combo, so no additional damage or free slide if the opponent techs the knockdown. Another thing is that you must be careful where you use it, because the tackle and the running flee at the wall can cause a wall splat onto yourself, and a responsive opponent can get additional damage and better positioning, so that's a terrible situation to be in. If, for whatever reason, you find yourself running into the wall, keep in mind that you can cancel recovery by pressing down 3+4 and going into Indian stance. Still a bad situation, but here the opponent has a lot less options for wall combos. You can see why I'm not a huge fan of this power crush. Yoshimitsu has 2 rage arts, the conventional one being back 1+2. It hits mid, its range is on par with most other rage arts, and in my opinion, is one of the better looking ones in the game. Like most other rage arts, it is launch punched on block, the damage is higher when Yoshi's life is closer to depletion, and absorbs hits during startup with a scaling of about 75% of the opponent's damage. Keep that 75% in mind for now, but other than that, it's a pretty standard rage art. Yoshimitsu's second rage art is his up back 1+4 and is essentially an enhanced version of his 1+4. A key difference for this rage art is that no matter how close you are, it will not activate unless Yoshimitsu is hit by an opponent. Whiffing this attack will leave you at the mercy of your opponent's most damaging punish. When this rage art does hit, it crumple stuns the opponent just like his regular 1+4, allowing you to do a full juggle combo. Additionally, Yoshimitsu only takes 25% of normal damage instead of 75%, since taking a hit is mandatory. The amount of active frames is actually pretty decent, but I've learned the hard way that it's best not to use this rage art as a read. This can be a great option if you prefer absorbing the hit to guarantee damage and you're confident in your ability to get a good combo, though it does not work against other rage arts. The last way to spend your rage is through Yoshimitsu's rage drive, which is the crouch dash motion with 1+2. It is an enhanced version of his crouch dash 2, which is also new in Tekken 7. Excluding flash, this move is Yoshimitsu's fastest launcher at 14 frames. While safe on block, this rage drive is an instant screw on hit and does not count for the allotted 1 screw attack per juggle. This means that you have an option to use it as a launcher or as a combo extender depending on your situation. Make sure you have that crouch dash motion down, because this rage drive is another great tool to have at your disposal. Now let's dive into his more standard notable moves, starting with his 1+4, also known as flash. This move is infamous for being the fastest launcher in the game at an impressive 6 frames. However, it is not as simple to use as others. This move has minuscule range that requires Yoshimitsu to be in close contact with the opponent's hurtbox. The pushback of most attacks will prevent an easy flash punish, but there are many character-specific exceptions and it's up to you to learn them. New in Tekken 7 is the ability to use flash while standing from crouch, making it easier to punish ducked highs and use an additional frame traps. What's not new is its altered properties in no sword stance, where it's 8 frames instead of 6 but has much larger hitbox, making it more usable as a conventional punish. In both cases, flash is not really a move that can be abused since it's so easy to whiff. Even on block, it's still launch punishable. To incorporate this move into your game plan, some knowledge of your opponent's tendencies and character is needed. You can write a book of all the different traps and strategies for this single move, but there's still a lot to cover, so let's move along. Next is his 3-4 double kick, where you must input the 4 immediately after the 3. It hits twice mid and goes over most low attacks. While it's not a very fast move, it is safe on block and plus on hit. This move also brings you a good distance forward, making it a viable way to get into your opponent's face when out of range, that is, if they don't sidestep. Holding the up direction will cause a transition to the Dragonfly, where follow-ups can be done from that stance. Technically, ending in Dragonfly gives you better frame advantage, but your options are limited. Dragonfly 2, for example, will beat out any attack on hit, but is still targeted. This move can be useful in combos as well, so it's definitely worth utilizing in some way. Forward 1+2 is another good move. Though not as useful as it was in Tag 2 due to the removal of bounds and combos, it retains the ability to spike the opponent and cause a floor break. It also still has great damage as a single hit move, and has fantastic range as well. It's nice that it knocks down the opponent on hit, but is also safe on block and has more than decent amount of pushback. It is nearly impossible to block punish. Down forward 2 is his basic uppercut. It says right there, basic uppercut. But previously it was not available in its default stance, so it is a significant change worth mentioning. It is among Yoshimitsu's fastest and safest launchers in his moveset, and combined with its simple input makes this a great launcher for newcomers. The down back 3 series of low kicks is a key move that should be used with caution. It is not safe on block, but it can be useful for pressure on unsuspecting opponents. The first 2 hits are natural combo, while the remaining hits can be blocked or low parried. Using down back 3-3 after back 1-1 is a natural 4-hit combo as well. Using all 6 hits of a string will cause Yoshimitsu to get dizzy and fall on the ground, so definitely avoid doing that. When using 5 kicks or less, Yoshi can use his while standing 4 to catch people still crouch blocking or trying to low parry. His other while standing moves are available as well since he recovers crouching. Mixing up the amount of lows and combining with the while standing kick can work against novice players, but more experienced players will be able to react and punish, so I don't recommend relying on this in neutral. It's also important to know that this move will not hit grounded opponents. This move is much more reliable as a wall combo ender. Its relatively decent damage and ease to perform makes this a great wall ender for beginners. Yoshimitsu's back 2 leads to one of his best non-launching punishers in back 2-2, which is a natural combo and knocks down on hit. This move has surprisingly good range, and following back 2 with 1+2 puts Yoshimitsu in his Kinsho stance for additional options. Another string from back 2 is his back 2-1, which is often used as a staple combo ender. Pressing 1+2 after back 2-1 also leads to the Kinsho stance. Returning to the back 2-2 string, it is an excellent punisher, but be careful not to abuse it in neutral. The second hit is duckable on block. While back 2-1 might launch people ducking for the whiff punish, it is unsafe against opponents simply staying with a standing block. Although both extensions are delayable, landing either of them after a block requires a hard read. The back 3 and back 4 series, known as the spinning evade, allows Yoshimitsu to retreat to a side more quickly than a sidewalk and escapes engagements that most characters cannot. Pressing 3s will cause spins to his left side and 4s have him spinning to his right. While repeated presses brings Yoshi farther and farther away from the opponent, keep in mind that each spin costs 5 points of life, and doing the max amount of spins will cause dizziness and self-knockdown. Also, using the evade with 2 or more spins will have a slower recovery. Fear not, as this recovery can be cancelled by quickly pressing forward to match the same speed as a single spin. Typically it's best only to use 1 or 2 spins at a time in order to limit the health lost and be close enough to punish any whiffed attacks. Up forward 2 is a great move that also has some significant drawbacks. Yoshimitsu can hop over lows before dealing an unparable low of his own. This low can be cancelled by pressing down, leading to his crouching options and avoiding a punish from an opponent blocking low. The offensive prowess of this move is insane. You saw earlier that this move is a counter hit launcher, but when used at a close range, it is a launcher even on normal hit by doing a while standing flash right afterward. While this is not consistent across all characters and angles, and it is already super risky to do at such a close range, up forward 2 to flash is among the most damaging combo starters Yoshimitsu has. Such a big potential comes at a big price. The startup is slow, and this move is easy to react to and easy to interrupt. Furthermore, this slash is launch punishable on block, and as a low, still weak to hop kicks and other low crushing launchers, whether you cancel it or not. Up forward 2 can be shut down in many ways and by any type of player. Know your opponent's tendencies before committing to this move. Yoshi's Rising Knee is another standard launcher, but unlike down forward 2, up forward 3 is also accessible from crouch and can go over lows. Though not as safe as down forward 2, it's not a bad option for beginning players. Up forward forward is Yoshimitsu's famous avoiding the puddle. It is a homing move that goes over lows, can floor break, can wall break, can cause knockdown on a normal hit, and is safe on block. Up 4 has the same properties, but up back 4 is not homing, does less damage, and is launch punishable on block. While all of that is nice on paper, the biggest drawback is the slow startup time considering its inconsistent hitbox and lack of range. This move can have some surprising whiffs. It's usually better to leave this move as an Oki option and when you have your opponent against the wall. Down forward 3 is another useful move. This kick has a slow startup but has good range and the full string is a natural combo. Both hits are also safe on block. The true value of this move, however, is that Yoshi's in a while standing state for a very brief moment after the kick. With the right timing, a while standing attack can be used immediately following the kick. It is very deceptive since there's no crouch animation, so the opponent has no way of telling if you will be following up with a standing attack or a while standing one. Of course, there's always the option to actually going into full crouch as well. The slow startup of this move makes it hard to use effectively in fast-paced matches, but should still be considered against hesitant or respectful opponents. As a launcher, Fubuki has great range considering its speed. It is safe on block but leaves Yoshimitsu back turn, so there's a certain amount of risk against a sharp opponent. As a forward input, this move is easy to delay and is great for catching opponents that whiff an attack right in front of you. Conversely, whiffing this attack can spell a world of hurt since you're back turned. Crouch dash 1 is another launcher that has excellent range, though it is not as fast as forward 4. Pressing 1 plus 2 afterward is a transition into Kincho stance where you have the option to screw on hit or attempt to counter hit if blocked. Though the attack is unsafe on block, using Gohosen at max range makes it nearly impossible to punish. Full crouch down forward 1, aka Samurai Cutter or Sword Sweep, is an unblockable low attack that launches the opponent. Despite the sweeping motion, it does not hit grounded opponents, so knowing your opponent's timing is important when using it as an Oki. With both players standing, however, Sword Sweep is highly effective at the wall since the opponent has limited escape options and most defenders instinctively backdash away. Since this move has a slow startup, it is important to use when the opponent is not expecting it by masking it with some of the other moves. Next is full crouch down forward 4, which is a somewhat conventional slow low sweep. It has good range and can be somewhat difficult to punish at max range, otherwise this move is easily launch punishable on block. So why use it? As you saw before, this move launches on counter hit, which happens somewhat often if you're frequently going under your opponent's high attacks. Successfully combining this with sword sweep and other moves will make your opponent think twice whenever you crouch, and Yoshimitsu thrives on the hesitation. Still, keep in mind that this move is slow and very unsafe. Yoshimitsu's sidestep 1 is simply a great move. It is a mid attack that has a large hitbox and is also safe on block. On top of that is a counter hit launcher that gives you a fair amount of time to continue the juggle in case you don't react quickly. It is one of the very few moves Yoshi has that's almost always worth using, as long as your opponent does not make you whiff or does homing attacks fairly frequently. Sidestep 4 is another great move in its own right. It is a homing attack that hits high and can also transition into Kincho stance by pressing 1 plus 2 afterwards. As you might have noticed, it is the same move as Kincho 4. Like Sidestep 1, it is safe on block and is a juggle starter on counter hit. As a high, it is not as abusable as Sidestep 1, but is still a powerful tool. So that about does it for the top moves portion of this video. Yoshimitsu has so many unique and situational tools, and I didn't even get to go into his stances and other unblockables. Rest assured, you now know the most important moves to play Yoshimitsu at a solid level. Now, let's finally wrap up this guide with some basic combos based on their damage and ease of use. Okay, that's all I have for this video. This guide was checked by some of the greatest minds of the Yoshimitsu playing community, and I hope you found it useful and informative enough to encourage you to try out this character for yourself. Thank you for watching.